Silent Hill 2 is one of the most quintessential games on the PlayStation 2. It's a game that epitomizes the genre of survival horror, with scarce ammunition and terrifying enemies that lurk around every corner. The layer of fog that lays across the whole map serves to ramp up the tension as you explore the town of Silent Hill and work out what in the good golly heck is going on. But that's the original game. The remake has been handled by Bloober Team, a Polish company responsible for the likes of The Medium, Layers of Fear, and Observer. So, how has Bloober Team fared in remaking the Konami classic, and is it worth your time and money? Silent Hill 2 starts off with James turning up at a restroom on the outskirts of Silent Hill. He received a letter from his supposedly deceased wife telling him to come to Silent Hill because that's where she is. It's an almost one-for-one copy of what we saw in the original, cutscene included. What you will notice, however, is the slick lick of paint that Bloober Team has given the remake. James looks a bit different, and so do many of the other characters, but let's be honest, this is an almost 25-year-old game we're talking about here, so they can only do so much with the original models. Heading into town, James passes through the local graveyard where he finds a young woman at a grave. This is when we can tell that things aren't going to go swimmingly because things just seem a bit off. Part of this is, of course, due to the nature of the original Silent Hill 2, which always had a bit of a Twin Peaks surrealist vibe. But part of this is also the character animations. Take, for example, James. In some cutscenes, rather than looking confused or scared, his face twitches in a way that just seems out of place for the situation he's in. What you'll also notice when initially making your way into town is that, like Bloober Team's other games, performance is a major issue, especially on the PC version I played. With a GTX 3070 and DLSS enabled, you would think that playing the game shouldn't be too much of a big deal. But it is, and I've had to lower the graphics settings to play at a stable frame rate at 1440p. The game also has micro stutters on PC, which kick in for no reason whatsoever. When you do eventually make it to Silent Hill, things are roughly the same as what you'll remember from the original. The game format and map layout is the same, but one big difference is the game is played from an entirely over-the-shoulder camera angle. In the original game, when going indoors, your camera would often go isometric and stick in the corner of the room like in Resident Evil, but that's not the case for the remake. This does have an impact on gameplay, with the original offering more in the way of tension as you navigated corridors completely blind and unable to see what was coming. Bloober Team's rendition of Silent Hill 2 has rendered the experience more of an action horror than a survival horror, much similar to how Resident Evil 5 changed up the formula of the games that came before. Ammunition is quite plentiful, and I only ran out a few times. That in itself meant that I wasn't really trying to run from enemies, I was actually trying to take them out so I could proceed in peace. This is where we really start to see the remake change the tone of the game that feels much different to the original experience. Another aspect of Bloober's Silent Hill 2 is that the enemy variety simply isn't there. There are a couple different kinds of mannequins, which generally just attack straight at you, but sometimes they lurk around the corners, remaining still so you think they're part of the furniture. The problem is that Bloober have made the mannequins so ubiquitous that they are in practically every room, which in turn means that you're expecting them in every room. So when you inevitably look in every corner and spot them before they can actually become scary. In fact, you'll get so sick of them that they become more of an annoyance than anything to be feared. And this kind of sums up Silent Hill 2 and its combat in a nutshell. You'll also face off against the creepy crawly guys and a couple of different types of nurses, which were absolutely terrifying in the source game. Their limbs twisted and turned in unnatural ways and they came straight at you with knives. But in the remake they're simply not that scary, and most of the time a combination of all three of these enemies will come at you in waves like a shooting gallery, removing any kind of spooks and instead replacing it with adrenaline from all the action. Silent Hill veterans won't really find much in the way of differences either. Your visit to the apartments flows into the hospital and beyond, and you'll still be solving puzzles to progress. This time around, things are a bit clearer when it comes to how to solve them, but you'll still run into frustrations. For example, I spent hours searching for 5 coins in the apartment block when I only needed 3. Yes, this is part of the puzzle, but it's also symbolic of how Bloober's remake has pushed forward in a lot of the wrong areas, but simply not innovated in the more obtuse ones. And this kind of sums up the whole Silent Hill 2 remake experience. Yes, it's got a shinier coat of paint, and admittedly it does look good, but it's also pretty much the same Silent Hill you've played a million times over. It adds new combat, which feels generally good to use, but it's almost like Bloober Team wanted to make sure you really use that combat by throwing non-stop waves of enemies at you, which then removes any semblance of horror. Frankly, I wasn't even that scared when Pyramid Head turned up because I had so much ammo and a handy dodge move. You'll also find your typical Bloober Team jank throughout. You need to be in just the right position to take ammo and items out of drawers and cupboards. The poor performance is extremely hard to ignore, and I even had a glitch that made me watch the same cutscene twice for no reason whatsoever.
What? Is this part of the game, or did this just reset?
The Silent Hill 2 remake is a mixed bag. On the one hand, it's the Silent Hill we all know and love, but looking and controlling way better than it did all those years ago. On the other hand, poor performance will cause your PC to chug, and changes to the combat system pushes the experience too far into action territory to feel like a truly faithful Silent Hill experience. When all is said and done though, I enjoyed my time with Bloober Team's Silent Hill 2, but I can't help but think that it could have been far more polished if another team had been given the task of remaking a game that means so much to so many. Overall, I recommend Silent Hill 2. It's worth purchasing at full price just for the sheer nostalgia hit that it will give you. It remains largely faithful to the original game, and its faults don't ruin the overall enjoyment of the game either, but rather hold it back from being a must-buy.